Again, sorry about technical difficulties. We should be live both on Facebook and YouTube right now for the Sinai Temple channel, Sinai Temple Presents. Again, we're doing a Mitzvah a week, which we are learning tonight about Netilat Yadayim, which is the ritual of washing our hands. This is specifically related to the temple service in the Temple of Jerusalem, but we're going to see what it means today, both in light of our present times and also in light of our Jewish rituals. So we're going to look first at two verses in the Torah. Again, this is from last week's Torah portion. It's from Exodus chapter 30, verse 19. First, I'll read in Hebrew, then in English. We say, "Berachatzu Aharon uvanav mimenu et yidehem ve'et raglehem. V'voam el ohel moed yirchatzu mayim v'lo yamutu. O v'gisham al mizbeach t'sharei lo hatiri shel Adonai." In English, for those who are wondering, from it, that is the jug of water that is used to pour upon somebody's hands, Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands together with their feet. Whenever they come to the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water and not die, or when they approach the altar to serve, to raise up a smoke fire offering to God. So we see that washing our hands is not just something of cleanliness, but rather it is a ritual. And for a moment, we're going to explore why the Kohanim did this, why we wash our hands, and most importantly, what it means to us again today in this time. So we see in the verse that we just read, the Kohanim, the priests in the temple, they're commanded to wash their hands and feet every single time they enter the sanctuary. We are familiar with washing our hands Jewishly, not just after or before we eat bread, but also when we leave a cemetery. But we don't necessarily have a bucket of water outside of our sanctuary or our chapel. But the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would wash their hand every single time in order to be clean for the service that they were about to perform. In Hebrew, it's called Kiddush Yadayim V'Raglayim, the sanctification of the hands and the feet. Even if the Kohen Gadol, even if the priest walking into the temple was not even going to lead a service, they would still wash their hands because it was the sanctity of the actual place. It was a Makom Kadosh, it was a sacred place. And even if they didn't go into the sanctuary, but anywhere in the temple courtyard, the priest would wash their hands. So Sefer HaChinuch, the book of education, which lists the mitzvot in order of the Torah, they ask why. Why do the priests perform this ritual, even if they're not going to perform the service, but they just walk in the sacred space? And Sefer HaChinuch tells us that the purpose of the mitzvah is to raise in our eyes the prestige of the temple and the prestige of the activities that were done there. It is therefore fitting to clean your hands, for it is the hands that execute all the required actions anytime the Kohanim touch anything related to the Holy Temple. In essence, it's not just cleaning your hands because they're dirty, but rather it's to promote an awareness of the sanctity of the temple, the physical place, but also our hands are the things, are the parts of our body that do most of the actions of our lives. We know that hands can be used for the positive and hands can be used for the negative. The same as any part of our body. Lashon hara, the mouth, can be used for the positive, but it can also be used for Lashon hara, it can be used for gossip. It can be used for evil words. And the hands are the same things. The hands can be used to hurt somebody, and hands can be used to make something sacred, to make something a little more holy, and to make not just our physical hands clean, but our hands can make others things clean as well. Now, the only washing in this case is required before they begin the temple service. Even if they were already pure when they got to the temple gates, even if they had taken a shower before they got to the temple in Jerusalem, they would still wash their hands. But if the Kohen Gadol, if the high priest's hands became dirty in between one service and the next, and when I say service, I don't mean singing and giving sermons. In this case, a service means sacrifice of animals usually, and therefore their hands literally got dirty with blood and soiled. If their hands became dirty in between one ritual and the next, there in fact was no need to wash their hands, unless their hands had become dirty by either using the restroom, falling asleep, or losing kavanah, losing proper intention. Now it's interesting, the only day of the year, you can probably guess, that a Kohen, a priest, had to wash their hand in between each service that they did for the day is Yom Kippur. On that day, the Kohen Gadol would wash their hand 10 different times. Because, as you can probably understand, on Yom Kippur, we are more machmir, we are more stringent, and therefore you want to be clean both each and every time. In fact, the service that most people miss on Yom Kippur, they're either taking the break or at home, it's the Avodah service. It's the service where we reenact the temple service, and we literally bow to the ground in front of the ark. But why not regular days? Because we understand that each service is holy and that all day they are completing those services and engaged in sacred work. So that's one part. It's a bit confusing because we don't see this every day. But in essence, the Kohen, the priest, would wash their hands before they went into the temple, even if they were not performing an act of service. A very small piece of Talmud to add to this, in Shabbat, page 50b, we actually have a chiyuv, an obligation for every single person to wash our face, our hands, and our feet daily. An obligation, a mitzvah. Why? Not to be clean, but to honor God. If that wasn't enough, the rabbis go so much more into how we wash our hands. We don't just put them under a sink, but rather we use a kior. We use a vessel, basically a copper cup, and it needs to be done from that vessel. And the rabbis tell us that it has to be specifically a copper vessel, and that's for hidur mitzvah, in order to beautify a mitzvah. And one last thing, what's the procedure? The procedure is not that you dip your hands into the water, but rather you pour the water over your hands. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we wash our hands before the motzi. It's one of the things that we learn even in preschool, right? Every Shabbat, every day before the preschool kids eat their lunch, they do netilat yadayim and they say the motzi. But why is it? Or the question is this ritual of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, is it connected to the netilat yadayim, the washing of the hands that we do every single day before we break bread? If it is, what is the holiness connection? And if it's not, then why do we do them separately? So number one, yes, it is connected. It is connected because we wash before bread like we do today, because we are emulating the Kohanim before they took their terumah, which was basically the food dedicated to the priest. It was sacred food dedicated to the temple. Since the priests washed their hands before they ate that food, then our table looks like a mizbeach, that is like an altar. In fact, the rabbis tell us that a Shabbat table is not considered a Shabbat dinner table unless we have spoken words of Torah. It is like our altar, our mizbeach. The chalot, the bread there, is like the trumah. It's like the food that was dedicated to the high priest. And therefore, just like they washed their hands to honor God, so do we. However, although the reason for washing for ordinary food is due to an association with eating sanctified food, we still don't have to have the laws be identical. So what does that mean? It means that when we eat ordinary food, like tonight, when my family had our meal, it doesn't have to be from a vessel, but rather you can just put your hands into the vessel. So we use the same tools, but we don't do the same ritual. Most importantly, washing one's hands for bread is not necessarily according to the Torah, but it's according to the rabbis. It's a later rabbinic rule, which becomes a mitzvah. So, to recap, we have our Kohen that would wash their hands in the temple. We have our ritual where we wash our hands before we eat bread. The rabbis equate us eating bread to the priest eating their sanctified food, and therefore we do that. Even though it's not exactly the same, the ritual is just a little different because we are able, or it's a little different and not as strict in the way that we do it. However, there's one washing of the hands that I want to focus on for the rest of the time that has nothing to do with eating, but everything to do not with cleanliness, but in fact who we are in this world. In Brachot 60b, which in the Talmud tells us that when one awakes in the morning, one must wash their hands and recite the blessing of Al Netilat Yadayim. Again, I said we recite the blessing. It's not just that you're cleaning your hands, but it's a mitzvah to say that God has commanded us to do this. Why is that? What is it? The Talmud in Shabbat tells us that before washing one's hands, one should be extremely careful not to touch your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, or any part of the body, because an impure spirit rests on our hands. Right? So we wake up in the morning, we stretch, and the Talmud tells us don't touch our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our ears. Don't touch any part of your body, because when we were sleeping, they often equate sleeping to a part of death. The Zohar explains that impurity is like death, and therefore we don't want that touch on our body. Wash your hands. But it is so important that we in fact say a blessing over it. So now I want to take just two short commentaries, later commentaries, that take two explanations of this washing of the hands in the morning, and hopefully leave you with a message of what it can mean for us today. The Rosh, a later commentary past the Talmudic age, he said that part of the general obligation to clean one's hand is because we're about to pray in the morning. And when we will pray, we want to be clean. In fact, he says that when you wash your hands, it doesn't even have to be water. Rather, it's to clean your hands. Just simply take a dry cloth. As long as your hands are clean before prayer, you don't have to wash them. You can just be clean, ready for tefillah. So when you tune in for Minyan on YouTube Live or Facebook Live tomorrow morning at 7:30, just rinse your hands, say the bracha, wash your hands with a dry cloth. That would be according to the Rosh. However, Rashba, another later commentator, tells us, in fact, it needs a vessel. You actually need to pour the water onto your hands. And therefore, when he says that, it must be more than just cleanliness. Because to clean our hands, you can do it many different ways. But if you're going to do it with a vessel, even that act of the ritual must mean something. So what is it? The fact is, the purpose of our creation, this is what Sefer HaChinuch tells us, that the purpose of our creation is for us to bring honor to God and to serve God. So, every single morning, right, we go to sleep at night, we wake up, and every single time that we wake up, whether it's 5 in the morning when my kid jumps in my bed, or if it's a snow day where I grew up in upstate New York, or if it's a day like today where unfortunately we can sleep in later because we aren't going to work, each one of us every single morning is considered to have been created anew by God. We're a completely new person. Thus, every time we are new to ourselves, we are new to God. And each morning we have a purpose in our creation as well. In fact, every single day, our Birchot HaShachar, our morning blessings, what do we say? We praise God, Pokeach Ivrim. We praise God for opening up our eyes, for sight. So Keif Kefufim, for the ability to sit up straight. We praise God for Chonein, Binah, Da'at, for intellect, wisdom, energy. Meaning, every Jew who wakes up in the morning this way, every single one of us who wakes up in the morning this way with a new purpose of creation, we are just like that Kohen in the temple in the sanctuary. That Kohen is approaching God's and God's service. We are doing the same thing no matter where we are. In fact, I saw a very sad picture on Facebook today. A good friend who was a photographer in Jerusalem, and before they had basically the curfew, she was able to go to the Kotel Plaza and take a picture. And it was completely empty. Literally one or two people standing that entire plaza. If you've been to the Kotel on Shabbat or any day of the week, you know that you can imagine the Kohen going up, serving God. And even though that Kotel Plaza was literally empty today, I'm 5,000 miles away in Los Angeles, California. Wherever we are, we know we have the ability that when we open up our eyes tomorrow and we ready ourselves for tefillah, for prayer, we have the ability to be like that Kohen Gadol. Very physically far away from us, very far in time, thousands of years before us, but we renew what that Kohen Gadol did, and we renew what we will do as well today. I know being inside for just a couple of days now, and we'll see how much longer we will be inside for. I know each one of us is going to need a purpose to renew our creation every single day. Whether you're a parent who just started homeschooling your child today, first of all, trying to do that myself with my wife and 3 kids, it is very humbling, as we know. If it is not being at your usual workplace and being literally stuck in the walls of your home, we're going to have to find a purpose. And I think technology has actually proved a beautiful purpose in a beautiful way over these last few days. I have many friends who are rabbis in parts of different synagogues, but to virtually see into their synagogues, their teaching styles, to learn from them, not just from in Los Angeles, but around this country, has been a true bracha, a true blessing as well. And so, washing hands. We're not just doing it to keep clean. Yes, of course, during this idea of coronavirus, hygiene is extreme importance. But I want to put that aside for a moment and understand that when we continue to wash our hands, to purify our hands, to clean our hands, I want you to make that a deeper purpose over these next days, weeks, months, and even years. Know that when you clean your hands, you are doing more than that. On Yom Kippur, it's cleaning your souls, but you are giving a purpose to ourselves each day. The prayer before we say for the Shema, we say, Hamachadesh b'chol yom tamid, that every single day we renew creation. We know we're going to have many more days in our homes ahead. But we also know by the simple act of washing our hands, we in fact are going to fulfill this mitzvah twofold. One, to keep our hands physically clean. But most importantly, two, we are going to renew our purpose on this earth. Again, this is the first installment of Mitzvah A Week. This evening we learned from Sefer HaChinuch the mitzvah of washing our feet and hands. From Sefer HaChinuch of Mitzvah A Week. This evening we learned from Sefer HaChinuch the mitzvah of washing our feet and hands. From Sefer HaChinuch, relevant to our lives, can perhaps bring meaning into this difficult time in our lives as well. Again, I want to thank you for watching. Going forward, our minyan again is at 7:30 a.m. and 5:45 p.m. both on the Sinai Temple YouTube station, also sometimes on Facebook Live. And if you have not gone to our Sinai Temple website, sinaitemple.org, you can also see all of the different classes that are occurring on Sinai streamed from all the clergy at Sinai Temple. This coming Friday, Shabbat services at 5:45 p.m. led by myself and Rabbi Guzik. And Saturday morning, 9:30 from Cone Chapel in Sinai Temple. We will be live streaming a Torah in the Round style service, which will be a musical service that you can enjoy from the comfort of your own home as well. Have a Laila Tov, and we will see you soon. Thank you.